long tentacles within its body. Due to their similar appearance in the game, players assumed the sea demon and bubble amoeba were related. But it later turned out that the game's developers simply hadn't paid much attention to the creature's design. Now, everything was happening in reality, and no one could say for sure what this creature was. Number 26 called the amorphous creature baby again and said that he was full. Amorph noticed that the creature looked tired. He returned back to his nest. So far, everything has been going quite well. Now he has finally decided what he will do next. He was about to head off in search of his next quarry in Area CO8, territory controlled by the space dogs of the Drava cartel. A cry for help was heard in the distance. One of the men grabbed the woman by the arm and dragged her away along with the green alien. The woman called for her husband. Her fair-haired husband demanded that she be released, but at that very moment he was shot in the back. The woman screamed, while the rest of the pirates began to take the valuables. They were ordered to take everything they could, kill all the men and capture the women. This was the unwritten law of the Drava cartel. A creature with a mechanical eye stood nearby, watching what was happening with obvious boredom. It resembled a lion, but instead of one eye and one arm, it had mechanical prosthetics. The creature looked dissatisfied because there was too little prey. The lion-like creature was addressed as a boss, and one of the humans accused him of betrayal. People hired these mercenaries for protection, so they couldn't believe that they would do such a thing. The boss replied that the man was a fool to think they were friends. He added that one couldn't expect honesty from strangers. The man cursed in response. He threatened that the defense forces should be on their way here immediately after the distress signal and that the boss and his men would be executed. But the boss wasn't the least bit concerned. The man continued shouting that death was too easy a fate for such scum and promised to turn them all into Hulk-like mutants. These words finally caught the boss's attention. He rose slowly. One of his subordinates, visibly frightened, hastily handed him a sword. The boss told the captain that he seemed unfamiliar with the Megacode mercenary code and decided to explain the rules to him. He grabbed the captain by the head. He then explained that betrayal during a mission is considered a crime for a mercenary, but the charge is invalid if there are no witnesses. He finally deprived the captain of hope, declaring that the defense forces would be of no help since there would be no one to tell what had happened here. The captain asked if he intended to destroy them all. The boss replied that he didn't quite understand the word, but he was sure of one thing, and he added that his favorite pastime is skinning pigs from Megacobe. The sight was horrifying. Blood was flying in all directions while the man screamed loudly. After some time, the boss opened the door. He was warmly greeted by one of his subordinates. The boss threw the torn face on the floor and ordered his men to pick it up and deal with it as usual. Then the boss remembered they had one more thing to do. The subordinate looked puzzled. Instead of explaining, the boss simply ordered him to bring the manual. Deep down, he was irritated, realizing that he was surrounded by nothing but idiots. The subordinate reported that the woman had already arrived. Her white lab coat made it clear she was a researcher. Nervously, she asked her boss why he had called her. The boss inquired about the work that needed to be done. The woman hesitated, gathering her courage to answer. She then explained that they were supposed to meet a man recommended by her contact, but he suddenly went missing. The boss barked and the woman screamed in fear. He demanded an explanation. She then clarified that the request had come from a research vessel under the command of Captain Yusung Samuel. They had been instructed to dispose of the body. The boss asked if these were really the Samuels. The woman was surprised and asked if he knew them. The boss replied that Samueli was the third capital of Titan, and then asked whose body exactly needed to be removed. The woman replied that this was a representative of the noble capital, a girl from the Eugene family. She added that they were promised 1 million credits for the job. The boss merely sneered dismissively. He decided those bastards were clearly hiding something. Something strange had been going on at the Megacobe Corporation lately. Rumor has it that the Ascertain family, a new power on Mars, is challenging the Eugene family, which has ruled Earth for many years. The Ascertain family was primarily involved in the development of spacecraft, but also secretly conducted research into DNA modification. The boss realized that the body of the man from the Eugene family likely contained numerous genetic enhancements. He conceived the idea of stealing the body and donating it to the Ascertons. For such a find, the Ascertons would undoubtedly have allowed him to set the price himself. He grinned contentedly at the thought of the possibility of getting rich. More than anything, he wanted to tear the Ascertons apart for turning him into a Hulk-like mutant. But he understood that personal resentment was one thing and business was quite another. He remembered Manuel saying they couldn't contact the ship and asked if they'd been ambushed. Manuel replied that he wasn't sure. The boss was irritated that someone was operating right on their territory. He didn't know who it was, but he knew they had a lot of nerve. Then the boss decided that as soon as they finished their business here, they would head straight to Yusung Samuel's ship. He ordered the crew to prepare for an attack. His men were fired up with enthusiasm. He ordered them to destroy the ship and make sure no traces were left. Either ship hummed as it built up energy. Then he suddenly jerked forward, and at the same moment the neighboring ship exploded. At great speed, their ship passed by like a shooting star. Meanwhile, a bomb alarm sounded on another ship. The explosion was colossal. Meanwhile, the amorphous figure watched the events unfold. Even while in his nest, he felt someone approaching. Excel. He placed his hand on the surface, awe, and created a connection. His feelings spread through the pipes like dark vines connected to his body. This led him to realize that the pirates were drilling into the research vessel's outer hull, attempting to force a docking. He saw the sign of the space dogs. Their drilling is almost complete. Soon a hole appeared in the hull, and the pirates rushed inside. Amor felt them heading straight for the bridge. It was obvious they were experienced people who knew exactly what they were doing. However, he wondered if they were truly smart or, on the contrary, stupid. Anyone should have noticed that something was wrong with the research vessel. Perhaps these people were simply blinded by greed. Meanwhile, the pirates themselves were astonished by what they saw. Everything around was covered with something that looked like vines soaked in acid. SDB, they reported to the boss that the bridge had been captured, but something strange was happening on the ship. The boss asked what exactly. They were told that there was not a single living soul on the ship, and that some creepy trees were growing around. The boss was angry as it sounded absurd. What other trees could there be in space? However, the pirates insisted they were telling the truth. Then the boss decided to check everything personally and threatened that if they were lying, he would smash their heads. Amber felt that two of them had powerful mechanical devices instead of normal hearts. Extra salty faxi. He also realized that the mutant Hulk was their leader. As he looked around at the others, he noticed an insect man with pheromones emanating from his body. Among them was a cyborg from the Star Union, with a mechanical heart instead of a real one. Amorph was pleased. He was facing a multiracial cartel. Since it was difficult for him to find and kill representatives of two different intelligent species other than humans, the appearance of such enemies made it much easier to fulfill the conditions for evolution to the juvenile stage. But then he noticed something strange. Among them was an ordinary man. It was as if this woman had a computer installed inside her head instead of a brain, making her look ordinary. Amorph decided to watch her closely. Ethton number 26 asked where he was going. Amorph replied that he would only go out for a short while, but asked him to stay in the nest because it was dangerous outside. H-key, he pointed to the plasma weapon and asked number 26 to keep an eye on it. A explained that this was very important. Number 26 happily agreed. Amorph decided to take advantage of the moment while the enemy was off guard. He planned to cut off their escape route by destroying their ship's power source. He assumed the pirates would defend both the research vessel and their own ship out of greed. He sensed they had already divided their forces into two groups, one for plunder, the other for defense. And as soon as they began to divide into groups, Amorph decided to start hunting, just like he always did. If fall, his fingers slowly slipped through the crack in the door. Then he pushed the doors apart and silently entered inside. It seemed like there were no security systems at all here, but that wasn't surprising. After all, it was a pirate ship. The pirates probably never even considered the possibility that they themselves might one day be robbed. And he quickly discovered the nuclear reactor, which was located very close to his position. Using his super senses, he scanned the surrounding area. Everything appeared calm, except for the android guards, who would immediately transmit a signal to the central AI if attacked. He wondered how to get past them without being discovered. At that moment, he noticed something interesting and his mouth started to water. Pause it. Tationasis, he decided to have a snack first. Amorph moved quickly along the corridor, but stopped abruptly, noticing that people were walking along it. They were a man and an insect man. He decided to deal with them right there. He quietly crept up to the side of the man. He noticed something flashing right in front of his face with confusion. But there was no time left to react. The next second, his head was severed. The insect man stared in horror at what was happening. He tried to press the radio, but the tentacles instantly grabbed his hand. Then his hand was cut off and fell to the floor along with the radio. H means blood gushed from the stump of the arm. At that very moment, the amorphous creature rushed at him and knocked him to the floor. A amorphous thing gripped all of its limbs, preventing movement. The creature tried to call for help, but the next second, his head was torn from his body. The amorphous creature calmly began devouring its prey. As he expected, this type of NPC did not help to fulfill the evolution conditions. Tyam, a voice came over the radio. The patrol team was asked what was going on. Amorph replied that nothing special. The person on the other end calmed down and merely chided him for his slow response. He was told to stop messing around and he apologized briefly. After this, Amorph opened the next door. He saw no point in engaging in combat with the androids. After inspecting the room, he sprayed acid around it. When the floor surface began to dissolve, access to the nuclear power source was revealed, exactly as he had predicted. A human would have noticed this immediately, but here he was dealing only with androids. Their systems were not prepared for unexpected situations. The engine compartment was completely open. At that moment, loud bangs were heard on the door, and a request for reinforcements came from the control room. The monster was trying to break in. The people in the control center realized they simply didn't have enough fighters to send help. One asked about the captain and the squad leader. He was told the leader was already dead. Panic gripped everyone. It seemed death was inevitable. They were warned that the creature was breaking down the door and ordered to prepare for battle. Many despairingly said they didn't want to die. Meanwhile, the pirates' jaws dropped as they watched the scene unfold. They watched recordings of events that had happened on the ship earlier. The boss was puzzled as to what was going on here. He saw strange plants and a lack of people. It looked as if the ship had become ghostly. Wanting to learn more about the attacker, he ordered his men to play the recordings again. However, the footage only showed mutilated people, without limbs or with them, but already having lost their minds. Not a single person on the ship looked normal, which only increased the boss's curiosity about what they were dealing with. He ordered his people to run even earlier recordings. They watched a recording of the head of the crisis management team, ordering B3 to join the others as soon as its communications were restored. The boss realized that this was the man in charge of the ship's defense. He also recognized Yusung Samuel. It was clear that most of the crew had already been incapacitated, and the leadership was in complete confusion. What happened next on the recording surprised him greatly. The monster attacked from above, suddenly falling upon the people. He then took cover behind expensive equipment and even used a fire extinguisher as a tactical move. The boss realized that they were facing an intelligent being, and therefore an extremely dangerous opponent. Iki watched intently as the monster attacked Arnold. At first, the boss was worried about how he would have to deal with the Eugene family, but now he realized that first he just needed to get the body safely. He called Manuel, but she stood as if in a daze. Called out to her louder and she jumped in surprise. The boss clarified her statement that contact with the ship had been lost yesterday. She replied that the meeting had originally been scheduled for yesterday, but the ship never arrived, so they had to look for it all day. On the way here, the boss had already figured out the basic information about the ship, but the problem remained the same. No one understood what kind of creature it was. However, since they had managed to enter unnoticed, he decided the monster was unaware of their presence. He ordered them to first find and destroy the creature, and only then search for the body. At this point, one of the subordinates reported that a problem had arisen. The boss asked which one. He replied that their ship's engine had failed. The boss didn't believe it at first, and shouted that it was impossible. After all, everything had been working perfectly just a short while ago. But the subordinate added that the engine had completely melted and was now impossible to repair. The boss slammed the table in anger and cursed loudly. He slammed his fist on the table, angrily declaring that he would tear this creature to pieces. The table couldn't withstand the impact and began to crumble. Raising his voice, he called Manuel again. Exam player Fission, he asked her if she could pilot the ship. She replied that she needed to test everything first. The enraged boss threw something past her and it exploded. Fear made her immediately declare that she could handle it. Hoesi, he assigned 3 men to assist her and led the rest with him in search of the cursed monster. He ordered them to move quickly, threatening to crush the heads of those who lagged behind. And meanwhile, the main character used his super sense. Realizing how furious the boss was, he just laughed quietly. The pirates were unaware that there were still survivors on the ship. About 20 people were hiding inside, including the captain and senior officers. Amorph spared them not out of mercy. He knew that a fight would inevitably begin between them and the pirates, because Megacope hates pirates. He intended to take advantage of this collision. There were currently 3 pirates and a woman posing as a normal human in the control room. This could have been an excellent opportunity to attack, but he was troubled by a strange premonition. The amorphous being's instincts warned him that this woman was dangerous. He even wondered if she was Arnold's master. Taper. He remembered Arnold saying that his teacher had many unusual abilities. However, the amorph was confused as to why Arnold was comparing the two of them, since the woman looked like a simple genetically modified human. But considering she's part of the noble elite Megacobe, who are obsessed with prolonging life, it's entirely possible her body has been modified even further than Kisaragi's. If her upgrades are comparable to the player's level, then even after evolving into a juvenile stage, Amorpha will have a hard time defeating her. The thought made him grin. It had been a while since he'd fought a genetically modified human. A powerful opponent simultaneously terrified and excited him. For now, however, he decided to leave this woman, the one he suspected of being Sihong Yujin, for later. His attention was focused on the pirates. They, in turn, listened in fear to the strange grinding of teeth. The boss was furious and emanated a frightening, oppressive aura. There was a short signal on their radio. One of the people immediately turned to his boss. He reported that the biological detector had detected people. The boss replied coldly, "So what?" He explained that the signal was coming from the captain's cabin, but the passage there was blocked, so he suggested drilling a hole nearby. He winced when the captain yelled at him and called him an idiot. The captain sarcastically asked if he even asked permission to go to the bathroom. After that, they got straight to work. After drilling a hole, he kicked it open with a powerful kick. He only glanced at the detector, and the next second he received a bullet right in the face. The shooting continued, and the others had to quickly take cover. The captain shouted at his men, ordering these idiots to move faster. He himself rushed forward, hit one man in the face with his weapon with all his might, and then punched the next one. He seemed to have gone mad. People screamed that they were looking at a real monster. A bloody massacre unfolded in the room. A few moments later, one man groaned pitifully. Soon his bones were broken and he died. The researcher screamed as he saw blood pouring out in a stream. He retreated in panic as the boss approached him and hastened to say that he surrendered. However, the boss coldly replied that their cartel would not accept surrender. The man introduced himself as the head of the ship's medical team and said he could be of assistance. These words piqued the boss's interest. He asked where the captain was and why the doctor was in his cabin. This question made the doctor nervous, but he quickly pulled himself together and said that the captain had abandoned the ship in an attempt to save himself. In the 40 to DFS, the boss asked if the captain had indeed abandoned his crew and fled. The doctor replied that he didn't know if he had managed to escape safely. The boss noted with irritation that things were going extremely badly. The ship was destroyed, and the only person who knew where the body was had already escaped on a rescue ship. However, he decided that the doctor might still know something. He asked him if he knew where the bodies were, and where the body of a member of the noble elite was usually kept. The doctor replied that a monster had taken the body. Upon hearing about the monster, the boss frowned in irritation. He punched the wall and asked why the monster needed a dead body in the first place. The doctor explained that the creature fed on people. Realizing this, the boss realized he had almost no time left. He ordered his men to split up and begin searching for the monster, moving in groups of 6 and reporting any problems immediately. Then the boss looked at the doctor and remembered what he'd said earlier about wanting to become a pirate. Besides, their crew was in dire need of a doctor. The boss asked if he understood genetic remodeling. The doctor nervously replied that he did. He hastened to assure the captain that he could trust him. Amorph observed everything through his super senses. He was a little disappointed that the boss dealt with the people so quickly, but this was not surprising because their leader turned out to be a mutant like the Hulk. He noticed that the pirates acted as harmoniously as a regular army, so he too decided to take action. Number 26 wanted to go with him, but Amorph told him to stay inside. However, number 26 insisted he could help. Amorph noticed that he acted almost like a child trying to help his father. He realized that number 26 needed combat experience too. Even if he couldn't contribute much, he couldn't be allowed to sit on the sidelines forever. He took him with him and warned him to be careful, as their enemies were dangerous. Number 26 replied that Amorphous should be careful too. Amorph wondered where to start and decided to head to the armory. The pirates happened to be there. The pirates grumbled that the place had become a veritable jungle. They couldn't understand what kind of creature could grow plants taller than the doors. They needed to clear a passage, so they began cutting the vines with plasma cutters, but soon noticed that they were leaking a green liquid. At first they thought it was just slime. One of the pirates complained in disgust that it was disgusting, especially because the liquid had splashed directly onto his upper body. The other pirate wanted to say something but suddenly broke off mid-sentence. He noticed that his sword was starting to melt. At that very moment, the man who had been hit by the liquid earlier screamed at the top of his lungs. His face slowly began to dissolve, turning into a terrible sight. The other pirates looked at each other in confusion, not understanding what was happening. Suddenly, heavy footsteps were heard, and the next second, one of the pirates was pierced right in the chest. The others shouted that the monster was here, noting that it looked different from the footage they'd seen. After hours opened fire on him at the same time. However, their attacks had no noticeable effect on the creature. The monster suddenly rushed forward. Its bladed tentacles cut through the pirates' bodies like blades. The insect man tried to escape, but suddenly a bubble amoeba covered his face. His body trembled with excruciating pain. At that moment, Amorph heard someone's cry for help. Someone was on the radio, reporting that the monster was here, but before he could call for backup, his skull had already been bitten through. Amorph continued to chew, slowly tearing it apart. The person on the other end of the radio could be heard trying to find out what was going on. Amorph picked up the radio and calmly replied that everything was fine. The man on the other side became angry. He began to scold him, but Amorphous merely apologized calmly. Amorph decided to keep the radio, realizing that it could be useful as a distraction. He noticed that one of the pirates was still breathing, despite his body having been almost completely melted. Amorph wondered if it was because he was a Star Union cyborg. Unlike Megacobe, which refines and modifies genes, the Star Union prefers to replace weak human bodies with machines. The problem is that they impose this ideology on other species as well. They modify any captured prisoner against their will. In Amorph's view, both Megacobe and the Star Union are equally insane. Amorphous ate the mechanical parts anyway. He was a little hesitant at first, but decided he'd be fine even after that. The taste seemed unusual to him, oil with a strong metallic taste of copper. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of him. As in the game, cyborgs were considered a separate species. The window reported that the conditions for evolution from hatchling to juvenile stage had been met. This came as an unexpected surprise. He remembered there were 12 cyborg pirates on the ship. If he ate them all, he would be able to immediately advance to the next stage of evolution. Number 26 asked him what he was so happy about. Amorphous replied that it was something Number 26 wouldn't understand anyway. Many call space dogs the scourge of space, but to Amorph, they are more like Santa Claus bringing presents. At that moment, the Golem Man opened fire. Amorph grabbed him by the face. Then he suddenly tore off his head and looked at it for a while. Blood gushed from the decapitated body. By this point, Amorph had already destroyed 2 groups of enemies, but missed 3 cyborgs. He noticed that the last enemy looked like the one who had been doused with acid in the armory. Everything on him had melted except his legs. He decided to tear off the leg and try to eat it. But after taking the bite, he immediately spat it out. He experienced no predation effects. That only happened if the body belonged to a creature he hadn't killed himself. His tail whipped sharply. It pierced the man being eaten by Number 26. Surprised, he asked if he was angry. Amorph explained that he was obliged to destroy everyone who looked like him. He then pointed to another body and told Number 26 that he could eat it instead of the old one. She felt bad doing this to Number 26, but he had no other choice. At that moment, he heard voices coming from a radio attached to the wrist of one of the pirates. Those still alive were ordered to report the situation. One group reported that there was a lot of loot in the cargo hold. Another reported that the mess hall was in complete disarray, as all the food had spoiled. Amorph, imitating the voice of a dead pirate, replied that he was currently inspecting the armory. Those in the laboratory were asked to respond from the control room. The amorphous creature had just eaten the human, so its voice had changed. It replied that the lab was clear. The control center was surprised, as it wasn't the voice of the one who usually held the radio. He then explained that the man was just about to finish his examination and leave. The control room accepted this explanation. Amorph noted to himself that for pirates, these people acted quite organized. Their boss was just a Hulk-like mutant, but he was still worth keeping a close eye on. Pushing those thoughts aside, he suddenly realized he was essentially acting in concert with a bubble-shaped amoeba. If the gaming community saw this, they would be shocked. The amorphous creature itself was originally designed for solitary action, and it had never been known for its friendliness. However, reality was increasingly diverging from what it knew from the game, and this simultaneously alarmed and excited it. Meanwhile, the boss sensed something was wrong. Due to his military background, he was very strict about reporting discipline. A person who knows the consequences of breaking orders would hardly make such a mistake. His animal instincts told him that this could all be a trap. The boss informed his men that something was wrong with the group in the lab and ordered everyone to head there. He then asked the doctor where the rescue ship was and where the ship's engine room was. The doctor pointed out the way. Inside, the boss was seething with rage because he didn't like the fact that someone dared to damage his warship. He planned to find an escape route and plant a bomb in the engine room. Since the engine ran on nuclear power, the small charge would work perfectly. After he leaves the ship, he activates the bomb remotely, and the monster explodes along with the ship. He understood that his people would perish along with the ship, but he was sure that there would always be many people in the universe who wanted to become pirates. He was only going to take Manuel and the doctor with him. Ekest Tenri, he called out to the doctor and asked if he knew anything about the monster's weaknesses. The doctor replied that he didn't know, and this immediately angered the boss. The pirate threatened him and demanded that he answer properly, but the doctor insisted that he was telling the truth. The boss knew the doctor was a coward, but he found it strange how little he said. This meant only one thing. The doctor was afraid of the monster even more than he was. Then the boss asked about the creature's abilities, and the doctor began to describe a monster that moved like a ghost. He added that the monster devours people in a single instant and leaves no trace of the body. People don't even immediately notice that someone has disappeared until time has passed. The boss chuckled and said that perhaps it was because they were just idiots. The doctor countered that the ship had a huge number of security systems installed, so many that it was hard to even count them. However, despite this, the monster still manages to avoid them and kill people. That's why he compared it to a ghost. Deep down, the boss thought it was absurd, but he still considered the possibility that the doctor might be telling the truth. So he decided to gather all his men. He announced that their plan had changed. He decided to gather his squad before heading to the lab. Amorph noted to himself that the boss was quite resourceful. He didn't fall for the voice imitations that easily fooled people. Perhaps it was the feral instincts of a Hulk-like mutant. But now it was too late. Amorph activated his super sense. The pirates grumbled, but still moved towards the indicated place. Amorph decided to attack them, this time using a new plan. Its tentacles merged with the vines that filled the corridors. He just used the nest maneuver. His perception expanded through these branches. The flow of his feelings spread across the network like a wave of consciousness, encompassing the corridors and rooms of the ship. The connection between the auxiliary organs was complete. Now the pirates were literally inside his stomach. The pirates noticed that the vines around them began to writhe. Amorph activated paralyzing spores, and thick black fog poured out of the vines. It had an immediate effect on the pirates. They began to foam at the mouth and died almost immediately. When Amorph reaches juvenile stage, he'll be able to use the nest maneuver much more freely. He tried it out of pure curiosity, and it worked. Due to severe exhaustion, he felt dizzy. He suddenly felt extremely hungry after such a rapid expenditure of energy. Number 26 jumped up to him and asked where he was going. Amorph suggested they go eat as he was terribly hungry. A few moments later, the main character had already grabbed one of the bodies. He tore the muscles with his teeth. He noted that it was quite normal for pirates to abandon their comrades. However, this didn't bother Amorph in the least. On the contrary, it was actually easier for him. He didn't have to fight for food. Number 26 also continued chewing greedily. Of the 7 killed, 5 turned out to be cyborgs. He checked to see how many more he needed to evolve. And now he had 8 cyborgs, so there were only 2 left, and soon he would be able to enter the juvenile stage. The remaining 5 cyborgs managed to escape. They headed to the training hall. Amorph wondered why they had chosen this particular place. He suggested that the pirates had decided to occupy a more spacious area to get a better view and better shooting angles. The only problem was that the ship's previous crew had once thought exactly the same thing. Ash Deck. The place where people once strengthened friendships and trained together has long since turned into a real massacre because of Amorph. Through the door, he could smell the pirates' pheromones and breath. Apparently, what they saw inside had left them quite shocked. Sahahe ordered number 26 to stay behind him because it would be dangerous further on. More than 20 people have already died in this place, and the death of 5 more changed nothing. The Amorph rushed towards them. The pirates opened fire on him, but the bullets did not cause him any harm. It continued to approach, and one of the pirates cursed, realizing that their weapons were useless against the monster. Then he decided to give up the firearm and pulled out a light blade. He tried to intimidate the creature by claiming that he was the second in command of the Drava cartel. Brandishing his light blade, he defiantly invited the monster to come closer. Amorph used his super sense and realized that it was a sonic blade that could damage his shell. But he also knew that a weapon itself was worthless if its owner didn't know how to use it. His auxiliary organs told him that this was an ordinary man of about 30 suffering from lifestyle-related ailments. This kind of haste was quite typical for pirates. The man swung his sonic blade. However, Amorph easily wounded him with a counterattack. The pirate flew back and hit a rack of dumbbells, but Amorph didn't let him catch his breath and immediately continued his pursuit. He cursed at the monster again. Amorph was even surprised. Since he killed Arnold, this was the first prey that had shown such tenacity. He decided to finish it quickly before the man could experience any more pain and pierced him with his tail. Now there were 4 left. He assumed they were hiding in the locker room. At that moment, the system window appeared in front of him again. This interested him. He received the essence of human genes and could now accept human nature. He wondered what this characteristic was. The name sounded too all-encompassing. However, he was not in a position to be picky right now, so he considered whether he should accept this ability. There are thousands of different characteristics in the world of space survival, but not all of them are useful. For example, mutants like the Hulk have the ability Rage, which doubles their physical strength but deprives them of self-control. There are also abilities whose disadvantages significantly outweigh the advantages. Traits with vague names tend to be especially dangerous. However, the space survival universe itself resembles a cruel dystopia inhabited by ruthless creatures. There's the Star Union, which kidnaps people and turns them into cyborgs. There's also Megacobe, which creates monsters through random genetic modification. In such a universe, it is precisely such species that stand at the head of human civilization, so it is quite possible that there is an ability that imparts human qualities. He reasoned that if this characteristic enhances human emotions, then for an amorphous being that feeds on intelligent beings, it is rather a disadvantage. The risk seemed too high, so he decided to refuse, but at that moment he suddenly felt something. It was as if his auxiliary organ was warning him to reconsider. He realized that this ability could prove valuable. He considered this. The little tentacles had never pushed him into dangerous decisions before. Ultimately, he decided to trust this feeling. He accepted the ability. A bright light flashed before his eyes. And that was the end of it. Nothing else happened. He felt his head but found no changes. He tried to listen to himself, but no sudden feeling of guilt appeared in his soul. Human nature turned out to be a mental characteristic. 3 more of these, and the amorphous one could gain a type of superpower enhancement. This ability will help him make the right decisions in critical situations when the outcome depends on the choice. He scratched his head and noticed that this characteristic in itself did not seem either good or bad. Ultimately, he decided to focus on the fact that he had fulfilled the requirements for obtaining the type. At that moment, number 26 approached him and asked if he was okay. He asked what had happened. Number 26 replied that he had stood motionless for a while and that he had found it strange. And deep down, Amorph knew that number 26 shouldn't worry about him. They moved on. Amorphous could smell the pirate scent coming from different parts of the training hall, and he had no intention of letting any of them leave. Amidst the sea of blood, people's cries for help were heard. One man held the gun with a trembling hand. He hid in the closet and wondered if he would be next. Compared to others, he considered himself a fairly decent person and convinced himself that he did not deserve such a death. Idea mana ATS. The creaking sound made him wary. The noise continued, and the man felt more and more clearly that the end was near. Ishti has always prayed that Chief Zubaka would look after him. In his thoughts, he desperately asked this patron for help. Meanwhile, Amorph already knew in which direction he needed to move. The man breathed a sigh of relief when he heard footsteps moving away from his hiding place. He decided that as soon as everything was over, he would immediately run away from here. He was even planning to go to the Star Union. The man peered cautiously through the small crack. At that moment, he was suddenly pierced by a blow to the stomach. The monster's fingers poked through a narrow gap in the cabinet door. Then the door swung open. The man froze in horror. In front of him, he saw bloody, razor-sharp teeth. He screamed at the top of his lungs, but was soon completely eaten. Its mechanical parts fell to the floor with a dull thud. Amorph calmly chewed the body, thinking that no one could hide from him. He had now absorbed 11 cyborgs. He only had one left. The problem was that the latter was in the control room, and there was also someone he didn't want to encounter, a man with modified genes, whom he considered a representative of the Eugene family. So he decided to deal with the leader first. At that moment, his small tentacles sensed someone approaching. The man shot at him, accompanying the shots with curses, but Amorph easily dodged. He grabbed the ceiling with his claws. The boss was seething with rage because his men had been killed, including the second in command. Amorph didn't expect the boss to find him first, but he decided it was even better this way. Mutants like the Hulk had a lot of useful genes, and Amorph saw this as an opportunity to replenish his genetic essence before heading to the control room. He also noticed the temporary head of the medical service nearby. He didn't expect him to join the pirates. However, it didn't matter anymore. Sooner or later, this person would still end up in his stomach. He told number 26 to hide. He said fearfully that he was scared and asked Amorph to be careful. Amorph replied that there was nothing to worry about. Number 26 stuck to the wall. He then disguised himself and quietly told the little one to be careful. Amorph looked closely at the boss and realized that he looked much more impressive than he expected. The boss was massive, standing over 3 meters tall. Many would say Amorphous didn't stand a chance against him. After all, the boss was an enhanced mutant like the Hulk. Amorphous was curious to see what this man was capable of. Meanwhile, the pirates in the control room watched the events unfold on the screen. One of them suggested heading to the boss's location. But the others did not support this idea, reminding them that they were ordered to help Monol. Act They asked her how much longer it would take. She replied that she was almost finished. One of the pirates asked irritably why the wreck was taking so long to operate. Manhwa explained that it was all due to the AI Frine, the Megacobe warship. This is the pinnacle of space engineering and computer technology, so it's impossible to deal with it quickly. The pirates understood nothing of her explanation. They simply told her to hurry. Deep down, she noted that Arnold had done everything quite competently. The monster cleverly used a smokescreen to hide its actions, but it couldn't fool her. She had the ability to remotely observe. She noticed the creature had cleared out the lab and taken possession of the gene samples. It truly was a very intelligent creature. According to the system's data, the monster only took samples. This meant it understood how to use its abilities. She wondered if this creature was absorbing genes for evolution. If so, then in some ways it was like her. So she was sure that the boss named El Chen would not be able to win. El Chen was nothing more than a monster, empowered by someone else's will. To her, he was a pathetic creature who didn't even understand what his own body was made of. She was already pretty tired of him, so his death would be good news for her. The pirates no longer held any value for her. She decided to reduce the number of genes the monster could acquire. Sick. The pirates asked her if she was finished. However, they were confused by her strange behavior. Manuel had several names. She removed her glasses and a blade extended from her forearm. Megacobe's enemies called her the Witch of the Spiral, but her family called her Shadow and treated her with reverence. The head of the family, Akira Eugene, called her Code White, and the man who was once her father, Shiyun. She was the pinnacle of the Eugene family's genetic engineering and the forgotten heir to their line. Meanwhile, the brewing fight began. The boss took the first step forward. He rushed forward and attacked the monster. Amorph managed to dodge the blow. In response, he nudged his opponent with his fingers, and with the other limb, he hit the metal leg. The boss staggered and groaned dully. The amorphous tentacle hit some capsule, and he felt an electric shock. His superpower organs were instantly electrified. Then he realized that the boss had secretly placed a pulse grenade. Amorph wondered if he was mistaking him for a combat android. If so, the boss was mistaken, though his choice of weapon was quite fortuitous. At that moment, the boss realized that the creature in front of him was not a new weapon created by the Star Union. He turned to the monster and asked if he understood his words. Then the boss pushed back some of his thick hair. Beneath them was a red switch implanted directly into his body. Amorphous assumed it might be the rage activation button. The boss claimed that he had planted a bomb in a nuclear reactor and that the detonator was synchronized with his heart. He warned the creature that if he died, the entire ship would explode along with everyone on board. Amorph used his supersense because he suspected a trick. The doctor's bodily reactions told him his boss was telling the truth. Then Amorph focused on the main question: would he actually dare to activate the bomb? The boss noticed that the creature seemed to value its own life. He noted that before him was a creature of high intelligence, superior physicality, and noticeable self-confidence. Therefore, he was sure that this creature had nothing that could weaken his desire to survive. He pressed the blade against the button located on the side of his head. His cells began to change rapidly. They moved and reorganized, as if they were madly evolving. This made the boss scream and cough up blood. His bones cracked with a loud crunch. He looked like a ferocious beast, breathing heavily and ready to fight. Then he growled. Amorph noted in his mind that the boss looked disgusting. It seemed like much more had happened to his body than a simple gene transplant. The boss stamped his foot, and the floor beneath him cracked. Amorph recognized in it the genes of a mountain crawler, creatures called stone dragons because of their incredibly strong shells. The boss roared loudly again. Then he lunged forward. Amorph struck him in the chest with his tail, but at that very moment he stopped, noticing the bomb. It was at this moment that Amorph received a powerful blow. The boss was waiting to see his reaction, but was confused when Amorph didn't move, and suddenly Amorph jumped sharply to the side. This only made the boss even more angry. He growled, and Amorph continued to keep a safe distance. Amorph's body throbbed with pain. If not for his rock-hard head, he might have died. He wondered why the boss had mentioned the bomb, then aimed for the head anyway, and realized the enemy was simply playing dirty. The boss mockingly declared Amorph's attacks useless. Amorph understood that unless he was struck directly in the heart, he had almost no vulnerable points. The enemy's armor was too strong. Only a plasma weapon could penetrate it. Amorph knew he could win if he could pierce the boss anywhere. However, it seemed the boss knew this too, and so began hunting specifically for Amorph's tail. The enemy rushed to attack, but Amorph remained confident. His tail was far from his only dangerous weapon. He dodged the blow, then jumped aside while the enemy continued to advance furiously. Amorph could secrete venom from his teeth and claws. He knew he would win if he could pierce the shell and strike. so he began to ponder how to overcome the defense his opponent was so confident in. At that moment, he grabbed the sonic blade. Mutants like the Hulk have an innate weakness. Amorph knew he just had to hold out until that weakness showed up. The cargo bay was where Amorph first woke up in this world, and now it was the perfect place to stall for time. A rumbling noise echoed throughout the cargo bay. The boss was hot on Amorph's heels. He crashed into various structures and boxes, but it didn't bother him at all. The cockroaches living in this compartment scattered in panic. Amorph pierced one of them with his tail. He ate it, thinking that he had almost no chance of directly confronting the monstrous power of the boss. Mutants like the Hulk are fast and strong, but their energy drains very quickly, requiring them to take short breaks. If you continue to provoke him into wasting his energy, the mutant's body will eventually stop attacking, whether he wants it or not. Amorph had only one option left: wait. The mutant Hulk screamed angrily, asking where this impudent insect was hiding. Amorph lay in wait and patiently awaited the moment that was soon to come. He remembered that the man had two hearts, and wondered which one was connected to the bomb's detonator. Amorph knew that mutants like the Hulk have their primary heart located on the left side, therefore it was highly likely that the detonator was connected to that side. However, Amorph understood that the boss was quite cunning, so it was impossible to be sure where exactly the device was located. To his surprise, the mutant Hulk finally discovered his hideout. Amorph instantly jumped up from his place, but the enemy rushed after him in pursuit, mockingly calling him a coward. Steam began to escape from the body of the mutant Hulk. He began breathing heavily, and Amorphous noticed it immediately. It seemed the enhancement had lessened his weakness, but not eliminated it entirely. Usually by this point the mutant should have stopped, but now its condition had hardly changed, only its speed had increased. However, it was clear that he was never able to completely get rid of the need to take breaks. Amorph took advantage of the moment and attacked the mutant from behind. The mutant Hulk picked up a huge piece of rock and threw it towards Amorph. Amorph jumped back nimbly, dodging the blows flying at him. Then he landed on the floor. The mutant Hulk roared in rage, and immediately after that he brought down a powerful blow straight onto Amorph's head. Amorph gritted his teeth and withstood the blow. Finally, he seized the moment and used his secret weapon. The blow was so powerful that the mutant's bones cracked. Amorph immediately followed up the attack with a bite. Along with the bite, he injected poison into the body of the mutant Hulk. The disfigured mutant screamed as he received an unexpected wound. In a rage, the mutant grabbed Amorph and threw him into the wall. The mutant Hulk was about to unleash another blow on Amorphous, but suddenly staggered. Amorphous chuckled, noticing the mutant's body begin to tremble. His legs began to shake, and he lost his balance and collapsed to the floor. Amorph noted that the paralysis wasn't as effective as it was on normal people, but the poison should have already spread throughout his body. The mutant Hulk tried to call for help, but Amorph mercilessly pierced his throat with his sharp tail. The Wege hasted any terror apart the enemy's ugly flesh until he finally found what he was looking for. The detonator was connected to his second heart on the right. A timer would activate if the device was subjected to a strong impact. The second heart served to reduce the side effects of genetic modifications. Amorph wondered if this man intended to drag him down with him to his death, knowing he would die anyway if the detonator was damaged. Dismantling the detonator would take time, so Amorph decided to enjoy the genetic material of the mutant Hulk as a reward. At that moment, number 26 called out to him. Amorph reminded him to stay in cover, but number 26 said that they were in trouble. Amorph asked what happened. Suddenly, a warning light flashed in front of him. He saw a vision of his own demise. If he remained here, a fiery attack would strike him, killing number 26 as well. For a moment, he froze in shock. Coming to, he instantly lunged to the side and grabbed number 26. At that very second, a flame burst out behind them. Esihun stepped forward and saw that the monster had managed to escape. She was surprised at how the creature had managed to anticipate the attack. Amorph was going to deal with her at the very end and didn't expect her to appear here herself. He noticed the gleaming blade protruding from her hand. Her genes were mixed with those of a white Galargon and another high-level organism. Moreover, dozens of other genetic modifications were manifesting in her body. Amorph knew that in his current state, he couldn't defeat her. He felt his whole body warning him not to engage in direct confrontation with this creature. He needed to retreat and regroup. H2, the mutant Hulk noticed Manal and called out to her. She calmly told him he had done well and then pierced him. Her blade passed straight through the detonator. She couldn't let the space monster escape. Amorph found himself in a critical situation and began to quickly think about what to do next. The bomb's timer was supposed to activate the moment it pierced the mutant. Amorphous knew that attacking it now would be suicide. He decided to observe the enemy first and gather more information. He noticed that her eyes were different from normal ones and wondered if they were the eyes of an extraterrestrial observer or perhaps a daredevil. Ixiyun told him that she had a proposal. Since he is somewhat similar to her, she is willing to spare his life if he agrees to serve her. Simply put, she wanted to make Amorph her pet. She knew he was a creature dependent on genes, and she was sure that she could become an ideal host for him. Ishi persistently invited him to join her. Amorph tried to comprehend what he had heard. The powerful Shiyun Yujin was demanding that he become her slave. A gust of wind blew down the corridor. Amorph was convinced that Shiyun wasn't lying. At least, she had no reason to do so. He also understood that the blade on her wrist was Galargon's claw, and even his hard carapace could not protect him from such a weapon. Besides, she had plenty of other means to kill him. At that moment, number 26 called out to him. Amorph understood that obeying her now was the most rational decision. Shiyun chuckled as Amorph walked toward her. She told him he was making the right choice. Number 26 patted Amorph, assuring him that he would stay by his side. At this time, Amorph was thinking that Shiyun did not understand at all why he valued Amorph so much. She doesn't know why he's so obsessed with this supposedly useless character, and why online communities call him Morph Park. The reason is simple. It's all about freedom of choice, thanks to which a creature becomes ever stronger and is capable of developing infinitely. That's why he loves Amorph. And that is why there's only one choice for him. Taking another step towards Shiyun, Amorph suddenly stopped and bowed. Number 26 noticed he was acting strangely. Shiyun extended her hand, intending to pet him and praise him for his obedience. Exportasta bras, but with the next moment she was at a loss. Amorph splashed poison at her and it hit her right in the face. Immediately after that, he jumped back and quickly ran away. Shiyun only chuckled with her eyes closed, realizing the choice Amorph had made. And she was even pleased by this. She was delighted that Amorph decided to play. She threw a fire attack at him. But he kept running. Amorphous knew she was stronger than him, and that she was the most dangerous opponent he'd ever faced since becoming Amorphous. However, he had already had to fight with outstanding enemies, and each time he emerged victorious. And he decided to show her that fighting wasn't just about brute force. The floors creaked as the mutant Hulk's hand moved. He tried to get up, cursing everyone around him. Telefilled with rage at her betrayal, he vowed to destroy her and make her beg for mercy. He was furious that the device had been destroyed. If he didn't reach the engine room within 10 minutes, it would all be over for him. But his stubborn will to survive did not allow him to give up. He crawled towards the engine room, convincing himself that he was not like the others because he was Elchindrava. Meanwhile, Amorph was trying his best to escape. And number 26 asked if he was in pain. Amorph replied that everything was fine now. Number 26 asked if this was true. Amorph patted him and again confirmed that everything was fine. Amorph knew that Daredevil Sihyun's eyes had X-ray vision, so a surprise attack wouldn't work against her. And even if he hid, she would find him very quickly. Besides, he was sure that her powers of perception were not limited to her eyes alone. Amorphous understood that time was working against him, and simply dragging out the fight would do no good. He assumed Si-hyun had already guessed his concern about the bomb, so she would surely expect him to try to escape via the escape pod. She'll likely seal off the hangar entrance and trap him. That's probably her strategy. After which she will try to suppress him with her overwhelming force. Simply put, the usual tactic. It was reminiscent of the same strategy he'd used against the pirates. It was as if he were fighting another player. For now, he's decided to focus on destroying the enemy, not the bomb. As for the unknown details, they'll become clear once he confronts it directly. The problem was that his offensive and defensive capabilities were significantly inferior to those of his enemy. Amorphous continued to search for another solution. And suddenly, he remembered the object in the laboratory. With its help, it may be possible to completely change the course of the battle. It was psionium. By taking it, Amorph would be able to utilize the abilities of his juvenile body for a limited time. The technique Sion uses is called Sword Dance, a technique of Galargon that combines with psychic powers. Currently, Amorph had virtually no resistance to psychic abilities. However, after reaching the juvenile stage, such resistance would develop. If Sehyun's claw had merely been transplanted, Amorph assumed his shell would be able to withstand such an attack. He'll also be able to use long-range attacks. The only drawback is the enormous energy drain. Amorph knew he had to finish the fight in a short period of time. He had no time to worry about his strength reserves right now. He told number 26 to wait a bit, then lowered him to the floor. Number 26 asked where he was going, and Amorph replied that he had to pick something up. 7. He scanned the shelves and finally found the item he needed. In-game, using it only triggered a buff notification, so he was curious to see what it would look like in real life. This is what he was going to find out right now. Suddenly, number 26 tried to stop him. Amorph asked what happened, but number 26 was silent for a moment. He was writhing nervously with anxiety, and Amorph didn't understand why he was behaving like that. Normally, he would have waited for an answer, but there was no time left, so Amorph drank the liquid from the container. At that very moment, his heart began to pound. His entire body felt like it was on fire, his bones cracked, and his veins bulged. His body tore through the old shell. The muscles began to change rapidly. He screamed loudly from the unbearable pain, but he knew he couldn't lose consciousness. The evolution continued until his eyes changed, but his entire body didn't become any larger or more powerful. He grew large horns, his limbs multiplied, and his figure became massive and muscular. When such a creature appears, it becomes clear that everything is just beginning. Meanwhile, number 26 was jumping up and down with joy. He was impressed that the baby had grown bigger again. Amorph's evolution worked. He opened his system window. It indicated that he was currently temporarily in the juvenile stage. He also noticed changes in his stats. The reinforced exoskeleton had been upgraded to the level of a monstrous exoskeleton. Now, impressive horns grew on his head, which could be used to ram or impale enemies. As he examined his body, he noticed a new organ, a bone stud on his left hand. Its power was comparable to a plasma pistol, and it could even be modified to have different characteristics. His outer shell was now covered in a protective field that blocked psychic attacks, allowing him to withstand even Galargon's claws. The last thing he checked was the time limit. In the game, the sonium effect lasted about 5 minutes. He suggested that in reality, the time limit would be roughly the same. Se-hyun was within his range of senses, so he knew he had to act quickly. Amorph released red mist to weaken Se-hyun as much as possible before the fight. After that, he activated the connection. 5 minutes was too short a time, so he decided to end the battle as quickly as possible. Se-hyun walked down the corridor. Just she stopped, noticing something moving on the ceiling. The next second, it burst and acid splashed on her. Her body hissed, but she responded with a fire attack, causing part of the ship to explode. A dull rumble rolled through the ship. Amorph already felt that Se-hyun was approaching. He grabbed number 26 and told him to hold on tight because they were going to have to run. Amorph rushed forward at top speed. He assumed Se-hyun had already destroyed the slime with a single blow of her blade. His plan was to lure her to the nuclear reactor. There, Se-hyun won't be able to fight at full strength because even the slightest impact or blow can cause an explosion. No matter how many genes Se-hyun has, it is impossible to survive a nuclear explosion. Amorph was almost at the target. Only one sector remained. But suddenly he stopped, and there was only one reason. Se-hyun was already standing in front of him, blocking his path. She prepared for battle, and Amorph threw number 26 to safety. Se-hyun swung her sword, releasing several waves of fire. Amorph was hit, but managed to withstand the attack. And it wasn't in vain. He was able to see the trajectory of her claw strike. Normally, he wouldn't have been able to see this. He wondered if it had something to do with his super organ. Se-hyun tilted her head slightly, confused by what was happening. Amorph's legs made a loud cracking sound. He suddenly lunged forward. Se-hyun was even pleased by this development. She cut it with her blade, and Amorph felt pain. Se-hyun noticed that Amorph had become faster than before. She was about to kick him, but he managed to dodge. Amorph attacked her with his hand, but she dodged.